For our last session today, I had the privilege a few days ago to catch up with founding members of the SOSA Consortium, as well as active participants from government and industry who serve in leadership roles and as steering committee representatives for the consortium. During our session, we discussed and reflected on our journey from the inception of the SOSA initiative to the current achievements of the SOSA Consortium. As we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary, it was quite enjoyable to take a walk down memory lane with some of the participants who were there from the beginning. The SOSA Sensor Open System Architecture Consortium was conceived by thought leaders from the U.S. Air Force, Navy, and Army to address the growing need for sensor systems that are more affordable, can meet the needs of multiple missions, and can evolve over their lifetime to keep up with changing threat environments and advancing technology. These leaders realized that several independent government-led standardization efforts could be harmonized and would benefit from an open standards approach to accomplish this standards alignment. The panel discussed the benefits of incubating the SOSA initiative within the Open Group FACE consortium infrastructure prior to launching as an independent consortium, and also discussed how the SOSA ecosystem is evolving to meet the needs of its customers and how industry can be encouraged to adopt the SOSA approach. Panelists also conversed about the importance of key stakeholders who are enabling the SOSA approach to succeed, the definition of success, the impact of the SOSA consortium today, and what's in the realm of the possible for the future. Today's panelists are Charles Patrick Collier. Patrick is currently the chair of the SOSA Conformance Standing Committee and the chair of the SOSA Infrastructure Committee. He works as a senior systems engineer with Aspen Consulting Group. He is one of the original founders of the SOSA concept, which began during his tenure as an engineer at the Air Force Research Lab Space Vehicles Directorate. Patrick is also a co-founder of the Next Generation Space Interconnect Standard, the NGSIS, and the Space VPX VETA standard, also known as VETA 78. We also have Jason Derner, who is the MOSA chief engineer for the MOSA Management Office within the U.S. Army Combat Capabilities Development Command, DEVCOM C5ISR Center for Engineering and Systems Integration Directorate. That's a mouthful, excuse me. He is responsible for maintaining the C5ISR and Electronic Warfare Modular Open Suite of Standards, also known as CMOS. Jason is also involved in various open architecture activities and standards bodies, including CMOS, Victory, MORA, and the SOSA Consortium. Mr. Derner is currently the vice chair for the SOSA Consortium's Hardware Working Group. He served in that role from its inception in 2015 until the latter part of 2019, at which point he was elected as the chair of the newly formed Technical Working Group, and he's been serving in that role since that time. Bob Matthews is a technical fellow and chief systems architect at L3Harris, advocating for and architecting MOSA developments for critical pursuits. Before joining L3Harris, Bob enjoyed a 20-year career as a civil servant with Naval Air Systems Air Command. While at NAVAIR PMA 209, Bob led the avionics architecture team that coordinated with Army Aviation and the Open Group to found the FACE Consortium. Bob was elected as the inaugural FACE steering chair, serving in that role for 5 years. During that time, Bob and his team also initiated the HOST standard and collaborated with the Air Force, the Open Group, and the FACE Consortium to establish the SOSA Consortium. Bob has received multiple Navy and DoD level awards for his work on open architecture. Dr. Ilya Lipkin is a technical expert at Air Force Air Combat Command. Dr. Lipkin started his career with the U.S. Air Force at Hill Air Force Base, working embedded drive-by-wire as a software architect and satellite support systems. His next assignment was in Global Hawk and MQ-1 through MQ-9 training systems at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where he worked all aspects of sensors and ground station management and simulation. He then worked in support of several sensor programs of record at the ISR, SOF, and fighter bomber directorates for deployment of systems, open systems and operational requirements as a technical expert for Air Force Lifecycle Management System, Sensors and Engineering Directorate, prior to his current position at the Air Force Air Combat Command. Dr. Lipkin is one of the founding members of the SOSA Consortium and has served as the steering committee chair since the SOSA Consortium's inception. And we also have Sean Droff from the Naval Air Systems Command. Sean is the Assistant Program Manager for Open Architecture for the NAVAIR PMA 209 Avionics Architecture Team. Sean is an active member of the SOSA Consortium and serves as a government steering committee representative for both the FACE and SOSA consortia. So welcome, everyone. I'm glad to have you all with us today. It's nice to see some familiar faces that I've worked with over the years. And as we reflect on our journey from when the SOSA initiative was first a thought bubble in a lot of the brains of people on this call here today, on this presentation here today, I'd like to take a walk down memory lane with all of you and discuss why the SOSA initiative was first started. Why did we initially pursue a SOSA consortium? And then get to the point of where we are with the SOSA consortium today and where we see ourselves headed in the future. So I'd first like to introduce Ilya Lipkin from the U.S. Air Force. Ilya, you were initially one of the brainchildren behind the SOSA consortium. Can you go into some detail about why we initially pursued a SOSA consortium back in 2015 timeframe? Probably before that.
Yes. So the challenge that was posed in front of me was to develop an open architecture for sensor systems that can support maximum engagement from the warfighter and industry, and also not be so expensive that we can't carry it through the decades forward. So the approach was basically to mirror what Bob Matthews was doing earlier with FACE Consortium to basically start up SOSA.
And Bob, you are next on my list of folks to ask. Bob Matthews from L3 Harris. At the time of the SOSA incubation, you were affiliated with NAVAIR and the steering committee chair of the FACE Consortium. What were your thoughts in combining an Army, Navy, Air Force perspective with a focus on sensors versus a focus on avionics software?
Yeah, it was an interesting challenge. The FACE Consortium, looking at the software stack from a very abstract, not a particular domain other than kind of embedded computing as our marketplace, and sensors were very specific. So you're starting to go from what we call a reference architecture to more of an objective or enterprise architecture with SOSA. And we needed that. We needed to have places that were utilizing the FACE technical standard, and so that you want those enterprise architectures adopting it. So it was a place for adoption from a standards level, that next tier up. It was also the hardware standards. We had at NAVAIR the Hardware Open Systems Technologies effort kicking off, looking at hardware standards, and from an avionics perspective, there wasn't a whole lot of difference in the processing interfaces, the VITA connectorization, standardization that we were looking for from what Dr. Lipkin needed for sensors. So it was a very easy transition to say, hey, we want to make sure that the host standard and work that NAVAIR was doing on the hardware and avionics was aligned with what SOSA was doing, so that we got all the benefits of that voluntary consensus standards body, got all the industry and government inputs into the hardware side that we were also getting for the FACE technical standard on the software side. So it really connected things in a lot of different ways.
Thank you, Bob. And Jason Derner, can you give us the U.S. Army perspective of why we had tri-service from the start of the SOSA consortium when we were initially pursuing the initiative?
Yeah, thanks, Judy. So the Army had started CMOS in the 2013 timeframe, so roughly 2 years before the SOSA Consortium kicked off. Our initial goal was to find an architecture to reduce the size, weight, and power footprint of our C5 equipment, as well as enable rapid tech insertion. One of our biggest challenges was everything we were doing was within C5 ISR Center, right? So we were looking for ways to expand, align with the other services, get industry more engaged. So when Air Force and Navy started talking about the SOSA Consortium, it was a perfect fit, right? To help us align across our other services, bring industry to the table. And we continue that philosophy, right? We continue to leverage the SOSA Consortium as that standards body to maintain a number of the specifications used by Army CMOS.
Excellent. So I'm going to ask Bob and Ilya, since you were both involved in the FACE Consortium early on before the SOSA Consortium was launched, would you describe the benefit of incubating the SOSA initiative within the Open Group FACE Consortium infrastructure prior to launching, and what value or startup benefits that brought to the SOSA Consortium as you matured?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to take you back a little bit, few years back. Patrick Collier on the line actually had another open architecture effort he was working called SUMO for Space Consortium, I believe. And there was a lot of lessons learned on what not to do that he shared with me when we were starting it. So part of those lessons was actually make sure you get good engagement with an industry, with an attractive business model and a well-defined structure. So what did FACE Consortium give us? Good model to follow, an attractive business case, and a solid processes and technical background to do this right. So the infrastructure that FACE built was critical and instrumental to standing up SOSA Consortium the way we did it, because alternative to build this up from complete ground was going to be incredibly challenging. So I'm forever grateful to the FACE Consortium to loaning us the infrastructure and the processes that were built up.
Excellent. Bob and Patrick, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't.
For us, it was from FACE Consortium perspective, like I said, we needed that complementary capability from hardware standardization. We needed that objective architecture. We needed multiple domain architectures that were going to reference the FACE standard. So it was providing, in essence, a new customer base. And then even though MOSA is a large initiative across DoD, it's still a fairly small community of subject matter experts that are actually writing the standards to make it happen. So there was just efficiency in having the two consortia working, together on the onset, because it was just a lot of overlap of personnel. So both from an industry and a government perspective, it allowed efficiency for those subject matter experts to not be doubling their travel and being able to leverage the consortia infrastructure, as Ilya said. There was a lot of inherent efficiency in doing it that way.
Excellent. So how is the SOSA approach different from other ongoing MOSA efforts? We have the FACE Consortium, the OSS, Victory, other efforts that are following a modular open systems approach. How is the SOSA approach different from others, in your opinion? And I'll start with Jason with follow-up from Sean and Ilya. In terms of tri-service participation, consensus-based standards and processes, what do you see that's different in the SOSA approach from other MOSA efforts that are going on out there?
Yeah, thanks, Judy. So you hit on a couple of them already, right? So one of the biggest differences is SOSA is not just an open standard, but it is truly a consensus-based standards body, right, with both industry and government participation. So that alone, I think, sets it apart from a number of other efforts out there. Personally, I think having that broad participation across DoD, across industry, has helped us develop a more robust standard because we're really marshaling the collective expertise of experts across the community, government, and industry. It's also, I think, facilitated adoption, having industry participate at the table, right? They now have skin in the game, and they're leveraging it for their own product portfolio. I've mentioned this in other panels, right? I truly think SOSA is becoming a mixing pot, right? Where we can bring different standards within the DoD, bring them together to leverage them and align them to hopefully get at more of a common MOSA across DoD. The commonality, right, is key in order to allow us to make the most efficient use of industry and government investment. You build it once, you can reuse it n times across the community. The last note I'll make is having the alignment initially across Army, Air Force, Navy, now Marine Corps, NASA, right, I think has helped us as government to better steer industry. Because each of us, an individual program or even a service, right, that the market is small compared to the aggregate of industry. So aligning allows us to increase the market size and hopefully help us steer the direction they're going.
Excellent. And Sean and Ilya, do you have anything to add from the Navy and Air Force perspective?
So this is Sean. From the Navy perspective, I think the inclusion of industry is key because a lot of times we get, well, what do we build to? What do we build to? With industry sitting at the table with us, all chopping this document, working the standard, it makes it much easier for industry to understand what we, the military services, and those other governmental agencies like NASA, as Jason said, to understand what they're building to. And I think that's the key to getting it out there. So as long as industry understands what we want and where we want to go, then I think we can get there faster, cheaper, and quicker. Thank you.
Could I add something, Judy?
Excellent. Yes, go ahead, Patrick.
And everybody can disagree with me if I'm incorrect, but I thought one key difference with SOSA is that there is industry, but industry is volunteering. I think with some of the other efforts, the government's contracting industry to participate. So I think that's a big difference. Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like it indicates that industry is coming in of their own volition.
Voluntary consensus standards body. Yes, it's a balance of customer and supplier needs, where the customer business needs are driving industry to come to have a seat at the table. But it's a collaboration to achieve a solution that works for both people on either side of the supply chain, with the government being the customer and industry being the supplier.
So an interesting point that this also bringing up is we integrated smalls and mediums together with large. I'm not aware of any other DoD efforts besides Space Consortium that enables smalls work with large prime integrators to develop common architecture and infrastructure. Most of the efforts that I'm tracking within the DoD are generally contracted to primes only. With SOSA, we are enabling smalls and mediums to sit together. The other thing we are doing that is unique is we have from dust to product vendors. What I mean by that is with the AMD, NVIDIA, and Intel being part of the SOSA Consortium, those are the silicon providers. With Abaco, Curtiss-Wright, Mercury Systems, and others, those are your product creators. And then with Northrop Grumman, Collins, Raytheon, BAE, and other primes, Boeing, those are your integrators who take that. And then, of course, the government. So we have the entire stack represented in the SOSA Technical Standard Development, which is, I think, one of the more unique aspects that is commonly missed.
Indeed. So Ilya, I'll continue on with you, and then we'll follow up with Sean and Jason. Are there other key stakeholders who are enabling the SOSA approach to succeed? For example, congressional buy-in, higher level than just customers and suppliers that we just spoke about who were members of the SOSA Consortium.
So yes, the other thing that surprised me the most is the political will that SOSA generated at the Capitol with multiple House Armed Services Committee shout outs, the two large MOSA memorandums that were signed by Secretary Army, Navy, and Air Force. How often does that happen in support of an open standards development activity? And the attractive business model that we developed has been another key driver for what we've done. It's amazing how much goodwill and political capital we were able to build up.
And Sean and Ilya, or Sean and Jason, do you have more to add on this topic?
So I'll jump in. The thing I'd add to what Ilya said is that tri-services memo. Oftentimes we down here in the trenches are the ones to see this and the true value. We've now got at the top level senior leadership understanding and the desire to assist us with this things like this memo that directs us towards SOSA and other standards out there to say you need to implement these in a way that needs to be done. Besides the fact that you've got congressional law out there that's out with the Congress straightening out there saying, hey, we understand there needs to be these open architectures. You need to implement them. It's cost savings for the taxpayers at the end of the day, and it gets that weapon system to the warfighter faster. Jason?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. You and Ilya covered most of it, just a few additions, right? So to echo the senior leader support, I mean, we've had tremendous senior leader support within the Army, both within the AFC and the ASALT chains, right? So that has been, I think, critical for adoption within the Army. We're also seeing CMOS SOSA codified in emerging requirements documents. For example, I mean, we have an approved requirements document for CMOS mounted form factor that's governing a large CMOS SOSA aligned program today. And then even from the ground up, we're seeing organic support within the PMs. I always like to give credit to PM Electronic Warfare and Cyber. They were one of the first adopters with the Army, releasing a memo back in June of 2019 requiring CMOS and by association SOSA, right, for all of their programs where applicable.
Excellent. And Ilya, I know you need to leave our conversation early, so I'm going to leave one final question, have you answer it first, and then continue on with the rest of the panel. How would you define success for the SOSA Consortium, and what's in the realm of the possible for the future?
So I define success for SOSA Consortium is maximum industry participation. More brains are coming, and our ability to take on more challenges that other consortium would never dream to do. And what I mean by that is success for us is to tackle hard problems and actually provide results that answer those hard problems. That is what I define success for us. And future growth will come as a result of it, because if nobody else tackles it, and we do, that's how we grow. And the last one, I define success in the number of standards we completed, complete technical alignment for use within the SOSA technical standard. Oftentimes, this is the hardest thing, is to use somebody else's work and ensure that it's aligned with what your goals and objectives are. Every time we reuse somebody else, we pick up all those dates and times and efforts and challenges that they went through, which saves us time and frankly improves the standard. So for me, two things: tackle more hard problems with increased participation, and see how many more technical standards we can align to resolve those hard problems within the SOSA ecosystem.
Thank you. And Ilya, I know you do have to leave us. We appreciate your time today. As steering committee chair, any final words or calls to action you'd like to share before we continue the discussion with the rest of the panelists?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, we need increased participation. So if you would like to spend more hours or more time or provide any other support for us to write the standard, would greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate your time, and enjoy the rest of your day. We'll carry on with the rest of our discussion. So back to my question. How would you define success for the SOSA Consortium, and what's in the realm of the possible for the future? Let's go to Sean.
So I think Ilya pretty much covered that success for the SOSA Consortium. As we go out and we expand this over other standards or we look at other capabilities out there, that allows us to incorporate and understand, makes it a greater opportunity for industry to understand what is out there as success. And purely having industry alongside with us and the growth of small businesses, because to me, and we talk here all the time, small businesses oftentimes is the key. We often refer to that small, there's a small business out there right now with the next iPad type capability for our fleet users out there and for our troops on the ground. So we need to have those small companies besides the big companies engaged, and this SOSA forum allows us to do that.
Excellent. Jason?
Yeah, thanks, Judy. I think I'm echoing the same points that Ilya and Sean just made, just with different words, which, I mean, we say we're aligned, right? So what we're saying should be similar. But to me, success is once we've got a technical standard that defines all the interfaces we need for current emerging programs and gives us the flexibility to individually compete from acquisition and tech refresh, the key modules within our systems. Industry adoption is a huge piece, but also industry adoption backed by a robust conformance program, right? So we have confidence in the modules, the capabilities that we're procuring, we're integrating. Going back to the reuse, I think echoing, I think something Ilya said, right? Once we can get to the point where we're fielding capabilities quicker and cheaper, because SOSA has enabled reuse across the program services. If I have a gap, I can leverage what Air Force has done, I can leverage what Navy's done. And then in terms of the future, and this dovetails into success, right? Success is not a finish line that we're going to cross, right? We need continued industry and government participation to ensure that the SOSA technical standard is staying responsive to customer needs, making sure that it's staying relevant, pacing technology. So at the end of the day, we're never done, right? So you don't, even though we will release 2.0, 3.0, so on and so forth, right? We still need participation to continue to evolve the standard.
Excellent. Bob?
From an industry perspective, I work at the front end. I'm driving pursuits. I'm always looking for new avenues to the market. So for me, SOSA is successful. Open systems in general is successful when industry has new avenues to the marketplace. And so measuring the success is how many vendors are out there that are actually advertising products aligned to the SOSA standard. If you look 5 years ago, there were a handful. Today, there's hundreds. And so the marketplace is rapidly expanding. So I think that's a really key indicator that the adoption is picking up. And so I think we've got early indicators that are very, very positive. But on the same side, we still don't see a lot of full adoption of programs, the platform level systems that are saying you shall adopt. So to us, from an industry perspective, we want to see the strong open systems language showing up in contracts. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where you take a marketplace and change a business model. The business model has to shift towards open systems, and industry will heavily engage. Ilya will get all the participation he wants when SOSA standards, open systems, becomes evaluation criteria, not just a shall statement that says shall do MOSA to the maximum extent practicable. That's a weak reference. When it says shall conform to the standard using an independent verification authority, and oh, by the way, we want to see that certificate of conformance when the proposal is submitted, not 2 years after the contract is signed. So that's the stronger the contractual language, the more successful we will be at driving a marketplace that industry will invest in. And once you do that, you will see the reuse. You will see, just like we've seen with other commercial initiatives where you create that multi-sided marketplace where both consumer and supplier have that market opportunity for the reuse. Things grow rapidly. You can look at smartphones as a prime example. there's multitudes of ways that we can expand the market when we know that our marketplace is across multiple services on multiple platforms. And that's where the more reuse I can show to my business, the more likely they are to invest, because we have greater market opportunity. Greater market opportunity equals greater investment, which means the warfighter gets the innovation they want faster.
Excellent. And Patrick, I'm going to switch gears, and we're talking about future tense, but we'll go back to present tense. How is the SOSA ecosystem currently evolving to meet future needs of its customers?
Two specific examples, because I mean the original set within SOSA, it was sensor system. It was based on sensors, and there were 5 modalities or 5 sensor types, I guess. It's expanded beyond that with the addition of DEWS, which had sensors, but it's essentially a weapon system, and then the addition of NASA, which fully utilizes everything that's in SOSA based on the sensors on a space platform, but NASA is looking to go beyond that and utilize whatever it can from SOSA and beyond for the whole platform. And this goes to things like Lunar Gateway and larger platforms that they're thinking about. So, I mean, in those two examples, I think it's evolved a great deal. Within the 5 modalities, I think it's evolving based on the fact that we want to go beyond just single modalities into multiple modalities. So I think that in itself has shown how it's actually able to adapt and evolve over time.
Okay, and this is a growth from a system perspective or something else? Can you elaborate on that?
I can elaborate in detail for the NASA one. It is from a system perspective, because they're looking at how they're looking to emulate what DoD has done based on the need on what MOSA provides and what SOSA provides. So they're catching up and trying to figure out the best way that they can implement on a whole system or different types of systems the idea of modularity and open system architectures in general. For DEWS, I believe it's the same thing. It's just a sort of a smaller platform, but it varies depending on the type of platform.
Excellent. And Jason, I saw that you had a hand raised. Do you want to comment further?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little different perspective from what Patrick provided, which was spot on, right? The other area how SOSA is evolving, right, is actually, and we mentioned this earlier, is actually getting the government customers or the customers of the standards in general at the table, right? A number of government organizations, right, have joined the SOSA Consortium, are firsthand articulating their needs, right? They're attending face-to-face meetings, they're identifying gaps, and then they're rolling up their sleeves to work with the consortium to develop the necessary specifications. So again, and going back to how's it differentiate, right? Having the end user and the developer both at the same table, I think is critical.
Excellent. So I'm going to end with one final question. What is the impact of the SOSA Consortium today? We talked a bit about future tense. We talked a bit about needing to see strong contractual language to build the ecosystem. What difference is the SOSA Consortium making today, and what value do you see that we're offering now? And I'll start with Sean, and then we'll do Sean, Jason, Bob, and Patrick. So Sean, what is your perspective on that?
Thanks, Judy. So I think the SOSA Consortium is allowing us to get products faster to the warfighter at a cheaper cost. And with cheaper cost, it doesn't mean we're just paying for it right now. It means we can upgrade that product, whatever it is, not taking 2 or 3 years, but can do it in 2 or 3 months, or maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And that's where we need to go in an ever-evolving world, is speed, ability to update the equipment that we get. Because it takes a long time in our process right now in order to get something updated. And in the world, there's not 2 years anymore that we have. In industry, I mean, if you go out and look at the cell phone market, right, everybody's updating today at 6 months or a year, all right? That means that technology is evolving. We have to get on that same kind of model where we can get it to the fleet and to the warfighters much faster than we are currently doing that. And I think that is the impact that SOSA and the consortium is bringing to both industry and to the military and to other governmental agencies within the government.
Excellent. Excellent. Jason?
Yeah, to add to what Sean said, I think the SOSA Consortium has really established itself as a critical forum to define, maintain, and align open standards for the DoD. When we started back in the Army, right, one of our criteria was all the standards that we leverage need to be backed by a robust standards body, right? Because if a standard's not evolving, it's a dead standard, right? Technology is progressing, the standard needs to as well, right? So the SOSA Consortium provides that forum for these standards to continue to evolve. And is doing so by bringing together the right subject matter experts through industry and the government, right? So going back to what I said before, we're never done, right? There's always something that's going to need to be addressed, and the SOSA Consortium provides the forum to do that.
Excellent. Bob?
I actually would go back to some of what Ilya had said earlier about, you're bringing together not just primes, what we had some consortia efforts we call the funded few, and it's a large customer representation. So I've been able to participate in a number of different standards bodies, and I will say the ones that are successful are the ones where government members are participating and taking leadership roles and are actively engaged. It's amazing to me how many standards show up, and the government shows up and says, this is what I want, and then they walk away, and that doesn't make for a good interaction, and it doesn't in my experience, it doesn't lead to good outcomes. So hitting on what Jason said, as far as there's a lot of government participating, that is having a big impact on drawing industry in. I go where my customers are, and if my customers are showing up at these consortium meetings, you're going to get industry showing up. It needs to be followed up, as I discussed before, with the contracts language, with an actual marketplace. But we're seeing that. We're seeing the folks that are showing up, the organizations that are participating are starting to put that language into their contracts, and it's getting more and more, I won't say strict, but enforced in the contracts language. And so the SOSA Consortium is bringing together a wide swath of industry. It's getting strong engagement at multiple layers of the government, different organizations, and therefore it's bringing a very diverse industry representation to it. And I think that just builds better standards. And again, I've seen multiple standards built, and I will say that the results, the outcomes of those efforts are distinct in the standard versus standards that are built as one-offs with smaller communities and the funded few. So I think SOSA is doing a lot of things the right way, building a truly consensus-based, voluntary consensus-based standard, is doing it the right way, and we're seeing the marketplace pick it up. That to me leads to a very bright future.
Excellent. And Patrick, I'm going to rephrase the question a little differently for you, because you were, back in the day, one of the original founders when SOSA was just a thought bubble. Between when you originally envisioned a SOSA initiative or a standards initiative like this, have we met your expectations from where we started back in 2015 to the impact that the SOSA Consortium is having today?
I suppose that depends on the kind of parent that I am. I would say off the cuff, yes, it's gone beyond what I thought it could have done. But I still have high hopes and high expectations that it can go even farther. Based on what we're doing and the amount of people in there, I'm one, amazed that we have this kind of participation and this interest, and two, sometimes tense that I want to see it to continue and get even better. So.
Excellent. And I'm looking forward to seeing the SOSA Consortium continue to succeed, continue to evolve, and make a huge difference in the marketplace, extend to whatever adjacent markets are appropriate, and be a game changer with how we do sensor procurement within the DoD. So thank you, gentlemen, for your time today. We appreciate your perspective, your insight, your expertise. I look forward to seeing you sometime in the future this year in 2025 as we continue the activities of the SOSA Consortium. And we appreciate all that you do and all that you bring to the table. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judy.
Thank you, Judy.
I hope you enjoyed listening in on our discussion as we reflected on our journey from the inception of the SOSA initiative to the current achievements of the SOSA Consortium.